Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. It's Doug Cunnington here. And in this episode, I interview Chris Pearson of DIY Themes. DIY Themes is the creator of Thesis, which is the theme that I use on Niche Site Project. I've been using it since the beginning, and I really like it. And in the past several months, Chris has released what's called a skin, which lays on top of the foundation of Thesis, but don't worry about the technical details there. Focus is like a new sort of minimalist skin that lays on top of Thesis. In the past couple months, I have implemented and started using Focus 100%. I was using a couple page builders, or one page builder in particular, to do like landing pages and a couple other things, but I decided to get away from that. So Chris and I talk a lot about that, and it's not a sales pitch for Focus by any means. I'm not an affiliate or anything like that, but this interview was very interesting for several reasons. So within a few minutes, Chris and I realized that we went to the same college, which is kind of cool, around the same time period. And then I didn't know this ahead of time, but Chris was pretty instrumental in like WordPress and premium themes back in the day. So I started using WordPress in 2013. By then, Chris had already been, working on WordPress and creating themes for like 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. Then it was partially like a therapy session for me to just hear someone talk about their experiences as an entrepreneur. And Chris runs a very lean team. We talk about that, and through the years, he's only had a few people working with him, and generally right now he's doing the actual customer support for his customers, which is kind of crazy knowing how many customers are out there for him. So it's amazing. And I think I mentioned it in the interview, but a few weeks ago, I had a couple questions. I opened a ticket, sent it in. Chris responded back to me personally. And I was like, is Chris doing his own support? He is. And that is one of the cool things. You get support directly from the developer, and obviously he knows exactly what's going on and can help you out. So anyway, it was very cool. And at the end, it's awesome. All right. So at the end, I asked Chris about some mistakes that he's made and just some things that he can share with us, to learn from his mistakes. So he gave several tips, and I feel like they can almost stand alone as their own episode or something like that. So I may pull that out. It's pretty awesome advice that Chris gives. So without further ado, I'm going to send it over to the interview, and I encourage you to check out DIYthemes.com. What's up? Doug Cunnington here. I'm with Chris Pearson of DIY Themes. Welcome, Chris.
Yo, good to be here.
It is a pleasure to talk to you. We were just chatting right before I hit record, and I've been a fan of Thesis and DIY Themes for years. I've been using it since the beginning, so thanks for putting out a good product.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for using it.
So for the people that don't know you, can you give us an intro, a little bit about your background, and maybe a little about DIY Themes?
All right. So a short version is kind of tough to do. I guess people would think of me as a coder. I'm a software developer, software engineer. I got my start, at least in this version of my life, got my start with WordPress back in 2005 as a designer. And at the time, that was sort of like the early version, like the early growth of blogging. Okay. Yeah. So there was a lot of demand for design. It was kind of a wild, wild west sort of landscape. And just all this demand, there was all this, people wanted to take action. Nobody really knew how. I knew how to put the pieces together. And so I had, kind of was able to build my profile during that time when there was just a demand for anyone who was thirsty like me to kind of learn how to do this stuff. And starting as a designer, you're always delivering pretty pictures to people. Essentially, you're delivering stuff that makes people happy. You say, this is a look I like. And it was that sort of value exchange that defined my early work. And pretty soon I realized that stuff didn't go that far. You satisfy one client, but then 50 people who view the site don't really care for it. You realize that you've only delivered something for one person, and that may not have any extended use beyond that. There may not be any other application for what you've built. And therefore, so like looking at it through that lens, I started to kind of feel like everything I had done was sort of worthless. Even if the person liked it or I got paid, like I didn't really care about that. I cared about the larger implication of the value exchange, which I felt like was lacking.
Got it.
And so that kind of got me, and through design work, I started dealing with WordPress themes. And then sort of having this realization that design was essentially worthless. I mean, it really pretty much is to some extent. Custom design is largely worthless. And this will be a theme that we'll touch on a little bit later, I think. But so I started using the mechanics of themes to deliver more long-standing value.
Got it.
And I'm still on that path.
Right. So you got started in about 2005, and for the ignorant people like myself, when did WordPress like roll out? When like the first iterations of the fork?
Early WordPress was really like 2003.
Okay.
Until early 2006, like January of 2006, Movable Type was actually the number one blogging platform. All the big bloggers at the time used Movable Type. And then there became an awareness through this demand for customization and whatnot. There was a demand for this customization. Movable Type was very clunky. And so WordPress was a little bit easier to customize at the time. But the thing that really tipped it in favor of WordPress, because Movable Type was paid, it was like $99, but WordPress was free. So you'd think WordPress would have been the leader. That was not the case. Movable Type was the leader because all the players were using it. Well, what happened is there became this SEO event horizon. People started to realize they needed to modify their HTML markup to be standards compliant, and Google would reward these sites. So it became like a gold rush to deliver HTML with SEO enhanced HTML. This was almost impossible to do with Movable Type. It was way more expensive to do with Movable Type, and WordPress made that much easier. There's a lot less friction on that pathway, and that really is what was the death knell for Movable Type and what launched WordPress into the popularity we see now.
Got it. Interesting. And then from your designer days, so you were doing like custom design for folks, and then you were like, this is not scalable in a way that is helping people and stuff like that. And that's how you got
the impact wasn't good enough. Once the work was done, it was an artifact. It was essentially already dead. I hated that.
Gotcha. And you probably couldn't really reuse it because it was proprietary to whoever.
Sure. Just limited application, always working in this very idiosyncratic space. That's not really how we solve problems at any type of scale.
Not for an engineer, right?
Definitely
like,
not.
What am I doing?
I have an engineering degree. It's not in software, but it should have been.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, what is your education background?
Well, my specific college degree is in mechanical engineering, but I actually think my education background is more rooted in my high school, which was more competitive and probably significantly better than any college was ever going to be.
All right.
That's why I learned computer science was in high school classes. And that was sort of latent knowledge that I had, even working with WordPress. And I sort of avoided digging into the deep PHP of WordPress for a very long time because I kind of knew what a huge can of worms that was going to be, and I knew that it would arrest me completely. And then once I finally did dig into that, it was like all of this latent energy and knowledge I had was sort of unleashed, and I'm still in that space today.
Interesting. And what I'm just curious, like where did you go to high school, and then where'd you go to college if you want to?
I went to a high school called St. Xavier in Louisville, Kentucky. It's a private Catholic high school. It's all boys. So it was competitive, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to do. No girls to hit on, so you gotta fight with each other. And then I went to college at Georgia Tech.
You did?
I did.
Oh, man. I went to Georgia Tech, too.
Amazing. 03.
Yeah. 03. Crazy. Okay, so I was a Comp E, and I graduated in December of 03. So we perhaps crossed paths.
Yeah, probably so.
Interesting.
One of the most interesting experiences, and I actually talk about this on Twitter and in social media today. When we were there, CS was a required gen ed class for everyone in the school.
Yeah.
I don't recall any other class giving people as much fear and problems as that class. When I was a freshman, drinking was sort of the main hobby for everybody in my dorm. And I would get completely hammered and tutor my residence hall on CS because they were so bad. They were so bad. I had 100% in that class, and everybody else is 40%, failing miserably. Can't deal with pseudocode or any of those concepts. I always thought that was very interesting because I felt like it was a psychologically a situation where people were they were psyched out.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the concepts are really that bad, but for some reason people seem to have a very difficult time grasping some of the stuff that I think is like a 1 or 0. Like, it really is pretty basic. It's just a different way of thinking. And if you're not open to it, and if you're scared of it, then you're definitely never cracking that wall.
Yeah.
But that's a formative thing for me. Just seeing all the pain and the fear that people had over this. It's like, man,
that's right.
I feel secure in my job because of this.
It's so true. 1501 and 1502. Yeah.
There it is. Wow. You remember the numbers. My goodness.
Yeah. My wife went there too. So we recall some of those classes from back in the day. That's fun. Yeah. Wow, small world. Okay, well, moving on to Thesis and Focus. Can you tell us when you got started with Thesis and kind of?
So I was still in the design, mostly in the design space in 2007. I was still doing freelance work, but I was really, really disenchanted with it. And in the fall of 2007, on a string of previous theme successes. So let's back the clock up a little bit. In 2006, late 2006, early 2007, I guess. I'm not even sure the exact date. I can find out from my site. But I released a theme called Cutline. It was a free WordPress theme that was adapted for WordPress.com, and I had another theme before that was pretty popular that was adapted for WordPress.com. Then my Cutline theme became very popular very fast. It immediately shot to #1 on WordPress.com. It was the most used theme in the world very quickly after its release. It was sort of a very Spartan, New York Times-y kind of look. And in the fall of 2007, after I had sold off Cutline to a different group, I'd kind of tired of running it, and it was sort of becoming a big support thing. And I was like, well, let's just ditch it. I built sort of even more New York Times-y style design that became the look that has been associated with Thesis forever. The classic, sort of Romanesque type layout with a serif font and very New York Times-y looking. Just go look at the New York Times homepage. You'll see what the original design was. And so I built that in 2007. And then, while I was building this, I was like, man, I want to sell a premium theme, which wasn't really being done at the time. And doing that was much harder than I realized, like setting up a store, especially back then. I was like, oh my God. So I spent probably 4 months, we'll say December through March of 07 to 08 overlap, finally got that store working, and then launched Thesis with basically no features on March 29th, 2008. And that sort of was I think there was a couple others that were for sale prior to that, but that was really sort of the birth of the premium theme market. And then after 3 months of struggling, in July of 2008, I launched an affiliate program and partnered with Copyblogger.com, and that blew the lid off the whole thing. That started everything we know today. It all started right then with that partnership, and made a ton of sales. Thesis was very popular for 3.5 years after that.
Got it. And I think when I got Thesis back in 2013, I remember seeing all the testimonials, and I think there was a lot of people that got started in that window where it blew up, and I was like, oh, I recognize half of those people. And it's it's huge,
pretty much everyone who's been anyone in blogging the last 12 years has had some contact with it at some point.
Yeah, pretty cool. So the big thing was hooking up with Copyblogger and
launching an affiliate program for that. I don't believe there had ever been another affiliate program run for themes. And so with affiliate marketing, it was usually small margins on a lot of products. You get paid a $2 referral for somebody buying a women's hair product or something like that. And then the opposite end of that was a web hosting referral this was where people like web type people, bloggers, were making the most money, was off these web hosting referrals. But even so, your volume is limited because that's a big purchase, and then you have to sell a bunch of little purchases. Themes came in right in the middle, like at $30 per sale for affiliates, and that actually filled in a nice gap. And that just opened the floodgates big time. I mean, that was a huge revenue opportunity for people who wanted to sell. The growth of those themes and like the demand and everything for them, just really, it launched a whole new marketplace worth millions and millions of dollars.
Wow. Amazing. And you were just good timing and like showing up at the right time.
So, I mean, a lot of the success that's been attributed to Thesis, I mean, it was the best product in the space at the time and absolutely blazed a ton of trails, custom CSS files, quarantining, PHP type customizations. All these things are kind of stuff that I pioneered early on. I've even got posts from my old blog in like 2006 advocating for custom CSS and that type of thing. But, so what was the original question there? Because I kind of on a little tangent there.
Oh, you know what? I don't even remember either. You were telling me a story, and I started
riffing and got off course. Couldn't recall what the original slant was.
That's totally fine. So, right. I guess moving forward, I'm curious about like setting up like the company and like running it, as far as like all of a sudden, it sounds like you were kind of a one-man shop for a little while. You started scaling a little bit. You mentioned support being a bit of an issue. So when Thesis blew up, how did you handle your company?
So it's kind of interesting. A big theme that I haven't really returned to in some time, but is still definitely true, is this idea of gravity. Okay, so for me, this in this sense, the use of the term gravity means like you are undertaking some activity, producing all this energy, putting some output out there, and stuff is going to find you by weight of your gravity, by the sheer force of what you were doing. You will pull things in. You will attract things that could be helpful. You can track the right kinds of energy. You also attract a lot of the wrong kinds of energy. But I pulled from what I was attracting for help in the early days. So I had people who were eager to provide support and wanted to, because they wanted to learn the platform. They wanted to help people. They felt like they had some knowledge and saw opportunity. And so I played to that in the early days with my support, like probably the second half of 2008. I was doing everything up until then, and still doing almost everything until early 2009. And then I started to get a little more aggressive with development. So that, if you're into development, you're also into testing, and that ends up taking a lot of time. And it's nice to be able to develop like in a vacuum without having to hear a bunch of signals, because you're going to get a lot of wires crossing, and it becomes very hard to make decisions. So I sort of started to quarantine myself, and in the early days, I had 3 people come to me through, just by virtue of what I was doing, and they were, very helpful and significant parts of the company for a long time.
Cool.
So it was just sort of organic in that way.
All right. Yeah. And I was going to say, just from some of the work that I do, I know like email support and that sort of thing. I can appreciate what you're saying. You need to be quarantined so your mind can do what it needs to do without so many distractions, and maybe you have a bad egg in there every now and then that's driving you crazy, or at least that's what happens to me.
It's inevitable. If you're contacting people, that's what's going to happen. It's really remarkable that I even got through those early days, that anyone did, quite frankly, because it seems to me that over the last decade, people's desires have increased and their ability and willingness to tackle them themselves has decreased. So we've had trends moving in opposite directions. In the early days, everyone was sort of pioneering and had this sort of like gunslinger mentality that they were going to, get in there and hammer on some things and make it work. And that actually was something of a pressure relief valve, even though the landscape really didn't support it at all. Like it was much harder to customize back in the day. Interesting. So fast forwarding to sort of current day, can you tell us about Focus? And I'm just going to throw out some of the sort of taglines and stuff: optimized for speed and clarity, visitor first approach. And I'm just going to let you, Chris, talk about that stuff. All right. We got to have a segue to lead into this reality to answer those questions. So we're going to go back to 2010. Okay. There was a big blow up on social media. I did an interview with Andrew Warner of Mixergy.com. I did an interview with him, and we talked about the success of Thesis and like the growth of WordPress themes. And apparently, I don't remember exactly the mechanics of it, but I think Matt Mullenweg of WordPress reached out to Andrew and was like, I'd like to respond to this or to talk about, stuff that he found unsavory that Andrew and I had spoken about. Basically, he wanted to attack me over the licensing of Thesis. And the reality was Thesis never even had a software license. And also, disclaimer for audience, nobody cares about software licenses. You're probably hearing this thinking, who gives a damn? And you're right. Who does give a damn? Nobody. That's the true answer to that question. But in reality, and back in 2010, I was kind of publicly lambasted for this, and Thesis never had a software license. Never had a software license. I sold like $6 million worth of product with no software license. Probably not, like $4 million with no software license. And then I was attacked publicly for this. And I don't like being attacked, and I'm certainly not going to get attacked and then just amend my behavior. Like after the attack, come to Jesus moment. I recant. Please absolve me of my sins. Let me just do the right thing so you stop attacking me. I'm never going to behave that way. It's just never going to happen. And so, if you bite me in public, I'm going to bite back. And some people didn't like the optics of that. Other people did, which is interesting. I prefer a guy who sticks by his guns when he's under duress. That's not everybody's cup of tea, especially if you already have favorites going in. But what happened in the wake of this was that it completely destroyed version 1 of my business. It shattered it and then caused some course corrections to occur. So needless to say, this happened in July of 2010. So I'd been doing a lot of thinking between like July of 2010 and the end of that year. It had become apparent to me through my continued development work with Thesis that so what I was attempting to do was to provide a foundation that could be infinitely modified to any flavor you want while retaining performance, putting that first, not committing these performance sins that just are hallmarks of WordPress themes and have been for so long. So I wanted to commit no performance sins. I wanted to be 100% web standards compliant. I want to give Google and other search engines exactly what they wanted with no BS. I mean, exactly. Not like it would be nice if. No, I want it to be this. So I did not want to compromise on the code underneath. What was under the hood. I wanted a perfect engine. And then, like I said, I want to be infinitely customizable. But the way that the landscape had been up to that point would not accommodate this. That was not going to be possible. And there were also some definite other points of leverage that were going to be available at the code level that had never been done. And I saw these opportunities. I began to really have a good vision of what that might look like. And so that was pressing on me pretty hard. I could have continued with the current course, which was very successful. And still at the time, even though I said my company sort of my course got corrected there and I had to make some other decisions, the company was still very, very successful. I was selling like $6,000 worth of product a day. It was ridiculous. But like I said, I didn't care about that. I cared about like trying to solve these problems. That's what was eating at me. It wasn't like, how do I maintain these sales? I didn't care. And so I set about refactoring what Thesis was like in building this engine to do these things I just described, to make it so that you wouldn't have to modify the core, to make it so that your customizations would be bulletproof, et cetera, et cetera. And what happened was that ended up being all told, like a 3-year journey of building and testing this thing. And it grew. I didn't know what it was when I started building it. And then when I was done, I realized what I had done was completely replace the WordPress theme system. And the reality of the situation is the WordPress theme system is a single file with a big if-then statement. If this, then this. If this, then this. And that if-then statement that runs the WordPress theme system, I'm saying using quotes because there's no system at all, is reliant on the naming of files that exist in the active theme folder, like categories dash whatever for a specific categories template. I mean, it is the most non-system system in the world. If you know anything about computer science, it's a sham. And so I replaced one file with a terrible if-then statement and a faulty file naming convention with an object-oriented modular piece of software to deliver templates and thus themes, and also styles and everything that goes along with that. It ended up being a monumental undertaking. In fact, it's probably, with the exception of the editor to do content, it's probably the most difficult functional piece and like the biggest and most important, because this, your HTML output is your website. You know what I mean? It is. And how well you can customize it, how well you can integrate things, like it really built the thing. I realized when I had finished that, like, why didn't this exist in WordPress before? Why had no one done this? Who has 3 years of time and this sort of insane determination to achieve that outcome? I only had that much time because the company was making so much money.
Right.
That's real talk. Couldn't have done it if it wasn't printing money. Could not have done it.
Wow. So that was 3 years. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So I rolled out. So this was real bad, and this is an interesting story. I talked about this publicly because I talk about what I'm doing. I always have, and unfortunately, I never should have talked about what I was doing. But I didn't have the foresight to know this, and so talking about it, I was talking about this probably in December of 2010 on social media, and so fomenting this idea that Thesis 2 was going to be a thing, and everyone loved Thesis 1. So it was like, well, let's see what, the godfather of the theme space is going to come up with next. And so there's a lot of expectation and a lot of anticipation for what I might do. Well, that dragged on all the way through 2011. I worked on it the whole year. I rented an office at some point, I think in late 2011, and hired a developer. And really tried to take it full time because I just knew what was in front of me, and continued to work on it all the way through 2012. We did this big marketing push. I had Derek Halpern of socialtriggers.com doing all my content and all my marketing at the time, and he really wanted something new to market. Like, he was chomping at the bit, and who could blame him? You know what I mean? We've got this huge customer list. We got all this enthusiasm. Like, definitely let's capitalize on this. So I was on board with that. But what happened was this dragged out over such a long period of time that people get frustrated. And in addition to that, trying to create some of these or capitalize on some of these marketing opportunities that just naturally occurred as a result of all this creates external pressure to deliver. But the problem is with marketing, you have to have a date, right? It can't just be an open-ended promise. It has to occur at a time. That way everyone can – that's how it works. Unfortunately, when you're developing something that you don't even totally understand the scope of, and how could you? Because there was nothing that existed prior to this. You know what I mean? It's not like you just look at this and say, oh, this is exactly what we need. It was never like that. There's always some new wart to uncover with WordPress, it seems. And so this development just dragged on and on and on. And finally, when we decided to put a date on it, we really aimed for October 1st, 2012. It always seemed like that was going to be achievable, but the reality was it was not. And even when something seems achievable, like in my life, honestly, like add 9 months.
Yeah.
Maybe add more. And that sounds crazy to people, but like this is the reality. This is the reality of developing and testing and engineering and throwing stuff against the wall and trying to figure it out, especially if you're forging new territory that's not been forged before. And so what happened with that is that all this anticipation happened. Thesis 2 was released well before it should have been. It actually... what people could use when I delivered it actually had fewer options and less flexibility than what people had been accustomed to before. So from an end user perspective, this is a failure. I don't understand the mechanisms underneath this. I don't care. I care about what I can use and what's relevant to me, and what I am seeing is not a good thing. And I sympathize with that viewpoint completely. And those people were correct in their assessment. And what happened was, because of this, there was a terrible, terrible negative cascading effect as a result. People became discontent. I was working feverishly to make changes and to continue to try and bring this thing to light. And I still had, the reality was I kept hammering away at this thing nonstop until July of 2013. So another good 9 months after the release date. But during that 9 months, I just got hammered with negativity. I mean, it was literally nothing but negativity. There was almost no positivity at all. The only people who were positive were people who really understood the WordPress theme environment and kind of grasped what I had built and what I was attempting to achieve. But those people don't pay the bills. And what happened, but what really sucked, and this has become a theme here lately because I've been talking about affiliates. What really sucked is when the big affiliates abandoned me. They abandoned me because my product was no longer selling as easily or as frictionlessly, and all the chatter around it is negative. It's just not worth, if you're an affiliate, it's not worth fighting an uphill battle at all. You sell the hot stuff. That's all you sell. But and I think that moment was actually pivotal for the entire WordPress marketplace, not just for my business. That really signaled a shift away from my products. Mm-hmm. because nobody was going to wait and see what I came up with after the fact. It was just Thesis 2 is a failure, full stop. Then that was sort of the narrative that became real. Now, I kept working at it because I knew it wasn't a failure, not at all. It delivered, it enabled me to deliver a much greater degree of flexibility that I'm finally capitalizing on today, which we will get there in just a little bit. However, what happened when affiliates abandoned me and started favoring other stuff is it really became clear that they were favoring exactly what the salvo that the market, wanted right now. Market was foaming at the mouth for specific looks. And then there was this idea, there's another theme called Headway that sort of started this. And I was working towards this. Actually, when I started making Thesis 2, I thought I was going to make a drag and drop editor for design. That's what I thought I was going to build. When I got into the process of doing that and actually working with something like that, I realized that doesn't work. It doesn't work. Everything's an idiosyncratic snowflake. You have no systematic level of control over anything. Like I said, everything's an idiosyncratic. Every adjustment is idiosyncratic. You're dragging a box out to this width on this particular template. Well, it doesn't apply to every template. And then you're adding idiosyncratic CSS for this particular thing. You've got spacing that's off. You've got sizing that's off. You've got all these, problems that are inherent to that type of editor. So I abandoned that very early on when I realized what the problems were. But that line of thinking was intuitive. And so that's what everyone began to build. That's what began to sell. That's what affiliates began to push. It was a snowball effect that led us to the page builders and stuff that we have today. Now, I would never sit here and deny that those things are useful for people in the sense that they enable people who don't know anything to deliver an outcome on a web page. The problem with the outcome, random outcome on a web page is that it actually has to work. It actually has to load in under 10 seconds. It actually has to be configurable if you ever want to change anything in the future. And that's where the problems start to arise. And anyone who's dealt with these things is going to be like, yeah, I see what he's talking about here. I totally get that. I ran into that same brick wall. And that whole momentum from that still exists today. And only recently, and I think pretty much because of my messaging starting in the second half of last year, we're fighting back against that because it's just not the right answer. It creates these untenable situations where you have a Frankensite that you can no longer control or manage. It's slow. It's clunky. Like people come to me all the time. My site's slow. I'm like, I can't help you. You've got layers of crap. So many layers of crap. You just could never afford to pay me what it would take to undo this. And then there's another problem that I spoke about in some of my other videos, but it's like freelance design is not what it was. Freelance development is not what it was 10 years ago. Everyone who's worth a damn has migrated to an agency where they have a cushy salary and they have better gigs. Agencies aren't going to touch you if you don't have $25,000. So that leaves this massive hole. So you can either take some bottom feeder off Fiverr and hope they know what they're doing when the reality is it's just going to screw up your website. Or you have to pony up for the agency. And this left this huge chasm in the middle of people who can't help themselves anymore. And so that my messaging now, I'm seeing a widespread appeal and a lot of resonance because people have painted themselves into a corner with these Frankensites, which is the only thing that's been sold in the last 6 years.
Yeah. And
so that leads us to Focus, which is my new product now, which is so with Thesis 2, that rollout, the problem was I did the foundational layer that nobody even knew, nobody even thought this needed to exist. Nobody realizes this was a need. So I delivered a need that didn't exist. So no wonder it wasn't very popular. But the skin layer, which is analogous to a theme on WordPress, that is where the functionality and the stuff that works for you lives. And Focus is a full-scale realization of all the stuff I've worked on for years. Systematic approach to design, where if you change one thing, everything else adjusts to accommodate these changes. Intelligent changes. It's not about making just one spot change here. Spot changes are for phonies. In code parlance, that's analogous to a concept known as hard coding. Hard coding is not how you build software. And so Focus, in addition to being functionally finally like the full presentation of what I've been trying to do for years. In terms of the actual design itself, it is a response to this emergent environment that we now find ourselves in. The reality is we don't use websites the way we used them in 2010. We don't browse blogs anymore. We click on links from social media, we click on links from email, and we click on specific referrals wherever we find them. And when we go to a page, we expect to receive whatever value was promised. And in most cases, once that is exhausted, we will leave. There is not much of this delve further into unless we are exploring a product that we wish to buy. People perform research and go deep when they're reading reviews, stuff like that. This is sort of the new social internet, and our behaviors have changed in response to this new emergent social internet. In addition, we have external pressures coming from the screens on which we access these things. A lot of stuff happens on social. 99% of everything you know with WordPress, Elementor, Divi, Avada, all the crap that these things spit out is designed for desktop. That's not the reality anymore. And the absolute reality of this is that anything that happens on desktop has to be massaged into an environment that will work on mobile. The number one problem people have with WordPress today is I made some change to my site, integrated a plugin, did something broke on mobile. It's because you're using a piece of crap that was not designed to do this. You're using something that was designed to satiate your immediate need, and all of this other stuff under the surface is like the tip of an iceberg, and then underneath is, Everest. Everest has not been accommodated, but this little peak where you're chilling with your tent is good. And I think people are coming to the realization that is an untenable situation. And so focus is my answer to many of these extant problems. And I think, people look at it and they say, well, this looks vanilla. This is not what I was expecting. That's probably true. It's not what I expected either. But it is a response to the reality that we now find ourselves in. And on top of that, it's fully configurable. I deliver you vanilla. That way there's not anything you have to remove to get to where you want to go. It's all adding. That's something else that WordPress assemblers, people who work with sites, will understand. If you work with a foundation, you generally have to undo a bunch of stuff that you didn't like about that foundation, then add your own stuff. I hate that layer. I don't want to undo anything. Anything I want to, that needs to be undone angers me. So I want to start with something and only add exactly what I need and know that I am doing everything in the most efficient way possible.
Got it. That was a solid answer, Chris. That was good.
A long-winded one to get to where we are today, but I think that history and that context matters.
And we went all the way back to 2010. That's amazing. So to sort of summarize, to make sure I got it generally right, you have a more sort of efficient foundation to build focus upon, and you've been working on it for years, and this current iteration is a bit of a reaction to the bloated themes that are out there, page builders that are slow and that sort of theme. So people can actually use it I'm pointing at my phone that you can't see, but mobile and tablets where we're getting, 50, 80% of our traffic most of the time, right?
Well, it depends on the site, but there's a huge enough segment. Like I said, the behaviors that we see are click-throughs from social media. Most social media click-throughs are they're trending towards mobile click-throughs. Yep. And so that's the reality of how people are going to see your site and how they're going to receive information. There's so much to this too, but in most parts of the world, downloading a page on a phone is not done over Wi-Fi. It's done over broadband, and broadband's not cheap. There's so much baked in crap with your typical WordPress page. So if you use a tool called webpagetest.org, you can see this. But your average WordPress page is going to come in at something like 2.3 megabytes. That means that phone's going to have to download 2.3 megabytes, chew up 2.3 megabytes of data just to serve one page. Contrast that with my stuff. If it's over 200 kilobytes, what are you doing? Which is, 10%. Yeah. Right. 10% is large. So this is efficient on so many levels. Like this, if we want to talk about environmental friendliness, being energy conscious, conscious of what we are consuming, I don't really understand how you can justify any other approach. This is ticking all of the boxes. It would be nice if. The only thing it's not ticking is this ego satisfying, overdone design sort of desire. But this has been the internet for 10 years. Nobody cares. I think we're blind to all this crap. We see big images. We just scroll down to the content. We don't give a shit what that image is. Right. Pardon my French there. Yeah. But people don't care. We don't care. I think of your experience on mobile, right? You load a page. It loads in clunky parts. It's got this big header thing. It loads an ad at the bottom. You're trying to scroll to get down, and you accidentally tap on the thing that popped up on the bottom. It's madness.
Yes. I was going to say, I was reading something this morning and I'm like, just get rid of the ads. What are we doing here? I don't care about, like you said, no one gives a shit about the header, and like, who cares? I just want the answer to my question. So
Exactly. We want that value exchange quickly. And, I could go on about this. There's 100 different angles that I could take this with and go into big discussion about marketing. Like, should you have email pop-ups? Well, these convert better. Yeah, sure they do. But the people you're acquiring are crappy leads. It's about value. It's about like really connecting. It's not about just, trawling the ocean with a large net and catching, you've caught your tuna, but you also caught 2 endangered sharks and you caught some other stuff and a narwhal. It's like, come on, man. Not all these are good transactions.
Exactly. So I had a couple other questions, but I think I know the answer to a few of them. So I would say a lot of plugins on the site, you're probably against, right?
Extreme prejudice. There's a ton of reasons why. Okay, so first of all, let's backtrack. Mentioned page builders earlier. Focus works great with page builders. And in fact, if you're hell-bent on using a page builder, you ought to use it with a focus foundation because at least the rest of your site ain't going to be a disaster. That's rule number one. Is Focus friendly with page builders? Absolutely. You cannot work with page builders in a better environment than this. But page builders and pretty much every other plugin that does anything you're going to want to do is going to commit performance sins with impunity. There's reasons for this. It's not like specifically just blaming developers. They are trying to shoehorn their stuff into an environment that is pure chaos. It is pure chaos because you have to work with other themes. If you only had to work with Focus, plugin developers could do a bang-up job and always preserve performance. But that's not the reality that we deal with. They have to work with all these other crappy themes that are done up in a variety of different ways. So they necessarily have to commit performance sins to get the thing to just work without you having to do anything. So that's what their whole business model is predicated on, making sure it just works for you with no hassle so they don't get support requests. But the trade-off that you are making with this exchange is to say, well, my site's now going to be not very performant. And if I ever want to make it better performing, I'm going to have to go through a lot of hoops and stuff that most people are not qualified to do.
Indeed.
So it's kind of a devil's bargain. It's not good.
And I was going to say I was using a page builder kind of landing page thing called Thrive Themes or Thrive Architect. Not a fan. I couldn't wait to get it off my sites and just use Focus. And it took a little work because it was, you know how it is to rip something out.
Deeply entangled in your content and everything else.
But I'm happy to say my site loads way faster and looks better. And it's just, I want to minimize the touch points just in general.
Yes.
And I realize that people really don't care about, the little feature box or if I can have columns or whatever. They just want an answer to their question and they don't want my ads or whatever to get in the way. So yeah, getting rid of Thrive Architect was fantastic. And little story, I had some issues, so I tried to get some support. Didn't go well. They're very backed up and it took days to get an answer. And then they were like, remove all the other plugins you have. And I'm like, it's a course site. I can't remove all the plugins. Like that's not an answer. But I submitted a support request to you, Chris, and you answered back.
I think I recall this.
Yeah. In like a day and over the weekend. And I was like, it's Chris answering my support request. So yeah, that's good job on that. That's amazing.
Thank you. There's actually some information behind that that's quite interesting, I think. So I can only imagine what these other companies' support issues must look like. I mean, a thorn in my side for years has been the nature of the questions I am asked in support, right? There are patterns that emerge. Like it's very clear there's going to be some patterns. And generally speaking, for product X, the patterns that emerge through support are showing you weaknesses in your platform or weaknesses in your messaging, right? People are asking questions they shouldn't be asking, or people are asking the same sorts of questions and you have a problem you need to fix. And this stuff really wears you down over time. If you are not able to answer in a patternized way, if every issue is a snowflake, that sucks. If you can answer things in a patternized way, you begin to iron out the support landscape. And if you really want to take this into a dystopian future, if you want to draw this out as far as you can, ideally you'd have an AI bot be able to answer every support request because everything follows a pattern. Okay, that would be the goal. If you want to run the most efficient company you can, your software is so patternized, your landscape is so patternized that everything fits into this and can be codified in some way. That's part of what my mission was with Focus, and why I've really tried to sort of set up these guardrails for people to operate within, because I know if you stay within these, you can be successful and get the outcomes you want. You may not be able to get some of the designy crap you wanted, but your expectations suck. You need to confront this reality. I've had to confront this reality. Things I thought I wanted, I have discarded because I realized that they are now worthless, right? This is just part of growth. Like, you have to be willing to let go of things you thought you wanted. But what has happened is that this has really streamlined my support and the types of questions that are asked. So my day every morning starts with, I look at the support forums. I try to give the best, most detailed answers possible, not just to satisfy what the request is, but to really illuminate what is going on with the platform. That's already been successful since February 6th, which I think that gives me some good fulfillment. But in terms of the support request by email, I mean, it's dried up to almost nothing. It's right up to almost nothing. So no wonder I answer them on the weekends and stuff like that. I got my coffee. I'm chilling up here. I got nothing better to do. Might as well answer a question. And so it's easy for me. And I imagine these other companies, it's just hell.
Yeah.
I bet I just, I can only imagine. It looks like a battlefield after World War I, I'm sure.
So do you do the copywriting on DIY themes?
I do. I am everything.
That's awesome.
100% of everything is me.
Okay, so you got a lean team right now. It's you, right?
It's me. Yep.
So what's your background in copywriting? Because it is really good. I'll put a link for folks to get a little tutorial as an example of great copywriting. But it's awesome. It sounds just like you. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's a great compliment. Well, I went through school at pretty high levels. Took the highest level classes I was able to take at each point. And I feel like I had a really good background in sort of everything. And like my grasp of English and stuff was pretty good, but I would not have considered myself a good writer, like coming out of high school through college and all that stuff. But my early internet career, I had a good background, but it wasn't refined. But my early internet career, I was exposed to people that were good at this stuff. Brian Clark of Copyblogger, he's good. I dislike, some of his actions toward me, but that doesn't mean he was not good at what he did. Derek Halpern, working with him was an absolute treat. He's great. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from watching others. Because I have been solely responsible for my product forever, it matters to me whether or not I'm connecting. It matters to me that it sells. So like I've had some pressure just on me to try and improve these things. And, I've been iterating on this stuff for 13 plus years. And so I have gotten better at that. I think I understand the nature of internet communications because I'm so active and I've been in this landscape for so long. So, there's a ton of experience there. I guess what I'm trying to say. So I had a good background, good foundation, ton of experience, ton of exposure to people who are good at this stuff, and a desire to refine my own techniques to make sure that it is effective. But on that note, I've always considered myself, not really considered myself, but like I've always been sort of a polymath type person, right? I don't like to just be good at one thing. In fact, I'm sort of, I think I live sort of an interesting, unique life. All I do is try to get good at things. I build skills. Yeah.
Well, what's some other stuff away from internet?
Oh, Lord, I've done everything. Sports been a big part of my life. For a while it was baseball, then it was softball, then it was tennis. Now I do golf. I'm crazy about that. I got a freaking golf simulator in my house. I hit balls every night. For the last 5 years, I played a ton of golf. I haven't played hardly any golf since I really started to work on Focus. But so I do that. Video games. I build Legos. It's just all kinds of crazy stuff. But my whole deal with that is to like understand the art and to get better and ultimately to sort of systematize everything and kind of figure out bulletproof ways to be successful. Cool. So mastery, I guess, is my thing. Ping pong.
Yeah. Anything.
I played pretty high level ping pong in the past.
Did you have brothers?
Nope.
No siblings?
Only child.
Only child? I was like, you got that competitive, must have been the high school.
I've just always been super competitive.
Yeah.
I think it's just in the genes.
Very cool. Well, it doesn't sound like you have any other online ventures or anything like that, like themes and design is your thing, right? Or did you have some other stuff going on?
Just
curious.
Not really. So, I dabble with stuff before I did the premium theme thing. But one thing that has emerged through that work that's sort of separate, and I'll tie this in just a second, but I came up with the golden ratio of typography is the concept that I started to really kind of work on in late 2011. And what this is, so we'll go back to Cutline. I mentioned that theme I made 100 years ago. I remember I did a big update for this that I had adjusted the line height of the primary text. Okay? So like the way the paragraphs looked, I'd made the spacing between the lines a little bit bigger. And I was just delighted with this. But I remember that I spent a whole day just making these little tweaks and then like settling on a result that to me looked better and provided a more pleasant reading experience. And I just loved that. But then I really started to try and unpack the mechanisms behind that. Like I wanted to understand, like, why did this look better? What did this mean? What did this imply? And it led me to realize that there was probably a way to, like, there's dimensionality to text. There's a certain font size. The column's only so wide. What it is, having a mathematical background, knowing that I could look at this and say, there's probably a best fit solution for this. And if there's a best fit solution, that means there's a curve, so you can fit along, an infinite number of points. And so that led me to dive into this whole golden ratio typography thing. And so I published my initial manifesto on that in December of 2011. The basic math there was full of mistakes. There was definitely plenty of mistakes, some faulty assumptions, etc. But I also uncovered some concepts that that have really defined what golden ratio typography was. So my finger was on the pulse. It just needed to be refined. Mm-hmm. And so I introduced some of that stuff into Thesis 2 skins in October of 2012, and then continued to sort of massage that and work on those. I released the Pearsonified skin for Thesis in like February or March of 2014, and that really had a fuller suite of golden ratio typography. Like it really I sort of understood what so it affects more than just typography. All the spacing and the layout can be derived from this. So like my basic hypothesis or theory is that, hypothesis I reckon, is that all the dimensionality on a page needs to be related in some way. It will have a harmonious effect on a viewer if it's all related. The question is, how do you make sure it's all related? Well, there's different ways. All of the font sizes that are in use could be related through some scale, a scale that's related through a similar proportion. All the white space, line heights of text, padding, margins, all of these things that define spacing on the page could also be derived from those same base units. They can all be connected. And if that's true, if you change one thing, you can change everything in a systematic way. So that's speaking to this process that I mentioned earlier of trying to figure out ways to do design without having to go through and do idiosyncratic spot fixes or hard coding. And so I was aware of this, this potential enhancement that could be made, and I rolled this out in the Pearsonified skin. But then I even started to understand it farther and refine it farther over the next few years. And then by the time I really got into building focus late last fall, I realized that actually last summer is when I did these refinements on the golden ratio typography calculator. I went back through all that math and realized that or figured out a way to make sure nothing in it was arbitrary at all, and that everything was tuned according to the golden ratio. And I figured out what that meant and what that output should be. And now that is baked into Focus as well. So this is literally the first design system of its kind ever anywhere. Everything is related. Everything is mechanical. Nothing is done with this manual input. It is all informed by math and is therefore infinitely flexible and scalable. It can adapt to any environment. It can be anything. And it's not even restricted to use on the internet. This could be applied to books, magazines, periodicals, anything. Anywhere text appears.
And for the people that don't use Focus yet, I can tell you basically you put in your font size and then everything else propagates out. You can tweak it, right, Chris? But that's
yes, you can spot tweak, and that's only in response to known support requests. Yeah, you would never do this. If you knew what you were doing, you would never do this.
Yeah. So yeah, you just put in the font and then everything else just it's spaced properly and all that stuff, right?
And actually for the people who are
Whoa.
And
actually, Chris, I lost you for about 15 seconds there. So
okay, no bigs. Where do you want to go back to?
We could just say I was talking about you just adjust the main font size and then it goes from there.
Yes. So for the people who are paying attention and thinking, not all fonts are the same. Like their physical characteristics are not the same. There's a dimension known as the X height, which is the height, the ratio of the height of a lowercase letter to the height of an uppercase letter. X is used as the main lowercase character for this. That's why it's called the X height. And some fonts have a very small X height. Some fonts have a very large X height. The trend now in digital fonts is to have a large X height. We've figured out that this is easier for reading. But the bottom line is these differences in X height require some tuning adjustments to make sure everything is perfect. And the golden ratio typography formula accounts for that if I have measured the font in question and identified its exact metrics. So I do this too. I spend some time, like whenever I introduce Google fonts onto the platform, I will measure those fonts using a proprietary technique that I've developed. I have videos on this. It's not like it's a secret. But, so I literally measure the physical characteristics of fonts so that I can tune them perfectly within the context of this stuff.
Very cool. I like it. And it's funny enough, I didn't even realize it, but I have a concept called the keyword golden ratio. It's not based on any real math, like your visual, golden type. Sorry, is it the?
It's golden ratio typography.
Golden ratio typography. Yeah. But the golden ratio, it's a good branding thing from a marketing standpoint. So one of my friends mentioned it to me and I was like, hey, I'm going to go forward with that if it's cool with you. So anyway, you throw in golden ratio and people like to hear that. So
yes. It's positive branding on golden ratio. Sure.
So we're winding down towards the end here, and you mentioned a few mistakes that you made in the past, but I wanted to give you a chance. Were there any other mistakes that you made that you want to share? Maybe people can learn from those mistakes across your journey here.
Yeah, definitely. So one mistake is setting up expectations. Expectation management is so much huger than I ever realized, but it is absolutely critical for your sanity as a business owner or somebody trying to, undertake some activity. If you're going to be working with people, with customers, whomever, expectation management is absolutely critical. And it is your fault if you set up bad expectations, even if you feel like it's unfair or maybe, people were making assumptions. You have to understand that people are going to be doing this, and this informs expectations, and therefore you have to manage those expectations. It's critical to manage expectations. Next thing, it's critical. You don't want people anticipating your next move too much. Number one, it telegraphs it for anyone who wants to be in competition with you. So therefore, it's not really that intelligent to do from that perspective. But you can cannibalize your own audience by creating anticipation for something that you may or may not be able to deliver on. So this whole under promise, over deliver could not be more true. And that's sort of, the anticipation, expectation, that's sort of a, entangled sort of concept. But that's critical. Another thing that's critical is partnerships. It's not critical to form them. It's critical to understand what you're doing before you enter into them. And to manage expectations there as well.
Gotcha. And
to clearly delineate, the circumstances under which you are happy to operate between both parties so that those lines are not crossed, because that's going to create tension, and the tension will ultimately corrode that partnership. And so you don't want to have one partner sort of feeling like they are driving the ship when you feel like you have a different ship that you want to be driving, because they're going to invariably want to turn in different directions at times, and that's going to be tough to navigate. So it's nice to have that stuff out beforehand. Mm-hmm. But the problem is when we see dollar signs and we see rewards, we end up making those choices in spite of known conflicts. And that might lead to money and success in the short term, but in the long term, in a 3-year window, it might be good. In a 6-year window, it might have a lot of problems for you and less problems for them. Like, you need to, think about this stuff beforehand. It's not free. And immediate reward, like I said, even if it lasts 3 years, may not always be a good thing. easy for me to say because I already had one good successful run-up. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'd be able to traverse that landscape in a way that satisfies me if I had not already had one successful run-up.
Got it.
Another thing, or another pitfall, I guess, is becoming reactive in your business. You do not want to become reactive to your customers or to complaints or to your competition. The second you switch to a reactive business model, you are forever chasing your own ass, and you're no longer calling the shots. You're no longer in charge of your own business. You are hoping to satisfy something because you feel like there's a disconnect between what you offer and what the market wants. So you are trying to please someone else. When your business has shifted to that, morale is going to drop. Everything it's just going to be this constant cycle of you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. You need to understand that going in. If you are become reactive, it's over. And I think that there has been times when my business has been, when everyone, all the energy around me saying, hey, Chris, you need to become reactive. And my whole thing is I never want to, I'm just not wired to behave that way. But if you are surrounded by people who don't understand that it is critical not to become reactive, then you will be in a problematic situation as well. And really, this is probably, of all the things I just mentioned, this is probably the most important one. Mm-hmm. It depends on how you're wired. Some people are wired to please. I'm not wired to please. I'm wired to innovate, which means I need to sort of actually not respond to criticism. But really understanding yourself, and if you're the type that doesn't want to be reactive, being thrust into that role is just the worst. It's just the worst.
Yes. Yeah, I could totally relate to that. And I don't know if I'm on the innovative side specifically, but reactive doesn't work for me. And every now and then I catch myself just reacting to, we'll just say internet comments in a general sense. Yeah. And it's what am I doing? That makes no sense for me to react to those folks. So
another thing that's come up here this year that I really kind of tapped into and started to internalize is this notion that defining boundaries. Boundaries. This is the hardest thing to do in business because we don't want to upset people. We don't want to create a situation, like an emotional or psychological situation with a customer that might be uneasy. Mm-hmm. The natural inclination is to never do this.
Right.
But that means you have no boundaries. If you have no boundaries, that means someone else is setting your boundaries for you. It's the same sort of thing as being reactive. It's just a different way of looking at it. But so we think, especially when we're just getting into business and we don't have a lot of sales, we think, well, if I define boundaries, I'm necessarily cutting off some potential sales. Yes, you are. And those sales you're cutting off are saving you from dealing with a bunch of crap. Not all money that gets in your pocket is good money.
Right.
The stuff that is implied on the back end of that may be terrible. Some of the situations you find yourself in, the patterns of behavior that are established as a result of your acquiescence can lead to bad places. You must have boundaries, and boundaries are freedom for you. And what matters, as a business operator, is it the customer that matters, or is it you? Well, I got news for you. All my customers don't have squat if I lose interest tomorrow. Everyone is effed.
Yeah.
But if I establish boundaries and continue to operate in a space where I am happy, then everyone who's relying on me is in a good position. So it is not just for me. It's for everyone else's sake as well. I have boundaries so my customers can win. Mm-hmm. I have boundaries so that I am sane. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Right on. Well said. All right, last question here, and then we'll let people, or we'll tell people where they can find you, find Focus and DIY themes and all that. Are you in any mastermind groups, or have you participated in anything like that?
It's been a long time, probably 2011 since I've done that. I did one local group here in Austin. I am not much of a group guy or a team guy. Okay. I am a team guy if I'm on a team like sports and stuff.
Yeah.
I like that. I like figuring out ways to help the team win. But I'm trying to think what I just have a little bit of a distaste for stuff like that because I feel like there's concepts and we try to thrust these concepts onto others when the reality is you just need to understand that a concept exists, chew on it, and see how that fits into your ecosystem in your scenario. And so I feel like a lot of those discussions in mastermind groups kind of devolve into like a best practices sort of thing. And I just, I don't know. I don't know. I think things require so much deeper thought, and like you can't really cover what it is for you in a mastermind session. It's just like a concept comes up, and I feel like we could have a concept come up in one sentence, and I could run with that and work on this for a month. You know what I mean?
Right.
So on that basis, and then by the same token, I don't like because it's very easy to see things in a concrete way when we have walked a path. But it's not concrete for others. There isn't like one-to-one correspondence. And I think I struggle with that too because, like I said, I'm such a systematic thinker, and knowing that there's idiosyncratic differences, I'm just not comfortable with those discussions, and they feel kind of counterproductive to me in the end.
Well, it's good to have. I mean, you're a contrarian, it sounds like, but
I suppose that's true.
But that's okay because it seems to work for you. But I was going to say everyone, loves masterminds, or at least the people that are talking about it. I mean,
totally. I mean, they're popular for sure.
Selection bias there. All right, Chris, where can people find you? Where would you like them to connect?
All right. If you want to connect with me, the person, my Twitter feed is honestly the best place to do that. I hate that it's quarantine over there. Everything should exist on websites. I'm all about the freedom thing and owning your own stuff. But unfortunately, Twitter is the least, it's the most frictionless medium for this. If you really kind of want to tap into all things me and all the stuff I'm talking and thinking about, that's the most interesting place to connect with me. It's at Pearsonified, which I'm sure we can put that on some notes on this thing at some point. Another place, my business website with all of my products, DIY themes, DIYthemes.com, DIY. People transpose those letters for some reason. DIYthemes.com. And then my personal website, Pearsonified.com, which is going to be getting some updates here soon. But those are the main places. Also have Golden Ratio typography stuff is now housed at grtcalculator.com. And the point of the GRT calculator is to enable you, if you're not using my software, which is a grave sin not to be using my software. But if you are not, and you want to see what your environment might look like if it were enhanced with Golden Ratio typography, you can go to that site and get the nitty-gritty details on that. You can input your information. It will spit out what your content might look like if it were better formatted with this Golden Ratio typography system.
Very good. I'll put links for everything so people don't have to write it down. And Chris, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Well, thanks for reaching out and doing this. It's fun. I haven't done something like this in a long time, so this is great.
Right on. Thanks again to Chris. I really had a good time in the interview. As I mentioned, it was kind of like a therapy session and just informational to be able to ask those kind of questions and really dig behind his business a little bit. So very enlightening. And actually, Chris and I talked for a little while after we stopped recording just because we had some stuff in common and just wanted to, talk shop a little bit. So again, thanks a lot to Chris. And I think we're going to bring him back on for some segments, and maybe actually more on the YouTube side where perhaps we tear down like landing pages and stuff like that. And again, Chris brings up some great points on how like the web is changing. People are consuming information in a different way. And, from my perspective as someone who does create sales pages from time to time using page builders, it's just a nightmare to work with some of these pieces of software that are, sort of Swiss Army knives in certain ways, but they're so complicated and so slow to use that, sometimes I question whether I'm actually getting a benefit by putting in all the extra time. And now it's just me complaining just a little bit. But the point is, when you realize, right, I've realized that maybe I don't need some of the landing page software that I had been using in the page builders, and to remove that, to take it out and just strip it down to the core content, it's actually a little bit more time consuming and complicated than I would have hoped. And that's how it works. Like you have these legacy applications or pieces of software, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a WordPress theme, and it's kind of hard to move to something new. Migrating is always difficult, and things break when you migrate. It always takes a little bit longer than you expect. There are problems that arise that you just don't know to even think about them until after you have migrated. So I'm experiencing some of that right now. If you're brand new to the Doug Show, thanks a lot for checking it out. I really do appreciate it. A lot of times I talk about affiliate marketing and some random stuff. I talk about beer sometimes and travel and a few other things, but most of the time I talk about Amazon affiliate marketing, SEO topics, keyword research pretty deeply. And I encourage you, if you're interested in any of those topics, just peruse some of the other episodes, check them out. There are many success story interviews of people that have found success with affiliate marketing. Those seem to be the most popular. So like I said, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I encourage you to check it out. And if you like it, you should subscribe. I am planning to do more interviews like this with other interesting people. Thanks again to Chris for speaking with me, and we'll catch you on the next episode.